Hi, I'm John Blackburn, and this is Entertainment Matters. This is a podcast for people who make live entertainment happen. I talk with people from across entertainment and beyond to explore how we think about our work and how we put that thinking into practice. In this notes episode of Entertainment Matters, I'm taking inspiration from my fantastic conversation with the wonderful Claire Owen-Jones. If you haven't already heard that one, do go and give it a listen. At about the 55-minute mark in Claire's interview, she gives us this fantastic definition of what being organized with your finances might look like. And for the purposes of this story, we're going to pretend today's date is the 6th of April. In fact, I'm going to read this now so I get it right. If you were going for a mortgage and they went, if you want to get the best rate, you've got to have it in by the 10th of April, could you, between the 6th of April and the 10th, have all your information to your accountant and know it's pretty good? I would say you would be organized. And I think that's really interesting because we often think of being organized as being a certain kind of person. We treat organization as a moral judgment about ourselves, or indeed other people, rather than a question of getting a particular set of results. And the effect of that, of course, is that we can sort of beat ourselves up about the fact that we're not that kind of person. And we can, in fact, feel bad at the mere idea of changing how we do or how we organize things. So let's start somewhere gentler and probably more useful. You see, it turns out that being organized is a surprisingly vague target. Instead of, I need to be more organized, maybe we can start with, I'd like to organize how I do this specific thing differently. So less judgment about who you are and more questions about what you want to change and how. And Claire's definition helps us do exactly that. She defines being organized in terms of a specific result rather than overall sense of being organized or even a particular method of doing something. So to start out in as practical a way as possible, I'm going to give you a list of questions now that you can come back to at any point that will help move your brain in a new organizational direction. Some of these questions are intentionally getting at the same thing. So just pick the versions that you like the most. For each one of these questions, you can pause the pod or come back to it or whatever, but ask yourself each one in your head in your own voice or indeed out loud. Okay, so we start by picking one goal or one task, one area in which you would like to organize things or indeed organize yourself differently. Ask yourself, in what way would you like to organize yourself differently? Why do you want to organize yourself differently? What would the goal of the goal be? So another way of asking that would be, what does it get you to organize things differently in this area? What would the benefits be to you and beyond just you of organizing this thing differently? How would you know if you were organizing things more to your liking? What would change? What kinds of things might you do differently? What kinds of things could you do differently? How could you do those things differently? How would you know if the new way was better? And then along similar lines, how would you know it was working? Hopefully, just sitting with a few of those questions and being sort of playful and genuine in how you ask yourself those questions should get the creative bit of your brain going. Now, this brings us to another thing. Being incredibly organized does not look the same way for everyone, despite what a few other YouTube videos will try and tell you. There is not one correct way to organize yourself or how you do a thing, no matter who you are or how your brain works. It's reasonable, depending on your goals and values, to organize a bookshelf by the color of the book spine. It's probably not a good idea to organize an entire library like that. I'm looking for the new Andrew Lloyd Webber autobiography. Ah, yes, sir, grey books, second floor. It wouldn't work, would it? Now, what's another example of values guiding organization? The cupboard you keep your pans in the kitchen. So first of all, the fact that you have a cupboard that has all the pans in it is a layer of organization on its own, isn't it? Then how are they arranged? Well, I mean, my natural kind of go-to is I have the ones that I use every day or most frequently in the most accessible place. However, simply arranging them by size, large, medium, small, also obviously works great. You get the idea. Goals and values are important to how we organize things and ourselves. Now, back to our work in entertainment. Plenty of people recommend very specific approaches to organizing how you work. Like these are the ones that have got names like time blocking or the Eisenhower matrix. There are other systems that also have names. Now, if you don't have a model or a way to start organizing yourself differently in the future, then by all means, go and have a look at the ones that have got names. They're all very interesting. A couple of clients of mine quite successfully use their own variations of some of those systems. You can look them up on the internet, or even if they're not using exactly the thing that you'd read about on the internet, they're using their variation that works really well for them. I also want to tell you about a couple of people that have kind of introduced me to things, shown me things that work really well. So I've had two clients who draw their organization. One was a label-less pie chart, and another person did like quite an abstract cartoon. Well, abstract to me anyway. Whatever went on in their heads when they looked at those drawings, they got what they needed and wanted to do done when they needed and wanted to do it. And I suppose actually that is my working definition of being organized, of organizing. And those questions that I suggested earlier might help you find your own working definition of organized. And this is where we can probably bring back in that larger being generally more organized. When you're a freelancer or you're running your own business, you have that extra layer of thinking I've discussed before, where you are the goose that lays the golden eggs, and you are also the farmer that looks after said goose. You are the practitioner and also the manager of said practitioner. So organization matters. And probably the most helpful thing any of us can do to be more organized is to very carefully describe what results we want, what our values will be whilst we do stuff. So what is going to be important about how we do a thing, what we think a good plan is, and then keep reminding ourselves about why we're doing those things. Because if you don't know what's important, it's hard to prioritize. If it's hard to prioritize, it's really hard to organize. Oh, I hate that that rhymed. So there you go, some possible pathways to organizing things more to your liking, and indeed ultimately being more organized. Remember that being well organized may not look the same as the guy you saw with his color-coded spreadsheet on YouTube. I actually use a color-coded spreadsheet for a couple of layers of my organizing, so no shade whatsoever. But it's not about organizing yourself the correct way. It's about discovering how you can organize you most effectively, the way that brings you the results that you want, not just the way the internet says is the best way. And finding those things out might arise from you getting creative with how you organize one thing differently. One thing organized to your liking now, and then another, and then another. And somewhere along the way, we notice we've become somebody who trusts themselves a little bit more to do things in ways that actually work for them. Maybe we just start to think differently so we can feel differently, so we can do things differently. Which brings me back to Claire. If something important to you needed to happen by a certain date, could you do it? If to use Claire's example, if your bookkeeping and accounting suddenly became important to you, you had to get it done and to the bank because there was the possibility of a great offer on a mortgage for a house you really wanted, could you do it in 4 days? If you got offered an incredible opportunity for a show that you run and it had to be fantastic and it had to happen next week, could you do it? If you're a venue and you were approached by Stevie Wonder to do a show at your venue tomorrow night, could you organize it? If yes, you probably have that thing pretty well organized. If no, you can change how you do it if you want. And I think that all leads us to a gentler definition of being organized, and hopefully a more useful one. Thanks for listening, and thanks for whatever you do to make live entertainment happen. If you'd like to be notified when there's a new episode and stay up to date with the podcast, you can sign up for the Entertainment Matters Cue Sheet at the link in the description. Have a great show.